All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Mayor Reese,
Here.
Councilmember Osk,
Here.
Nelson,
Here.
Davis,
Here.
Schuldes,
Here.
Butterfield,
Here.
and O'Brien.
Here.
Councilmembers Fagerly and Osmus are excused.
Stand for
Seven.
the pledge.
7 present.
Sorry.
2 absent.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we go to number 4, I had a citizen come to me early this morning wondering if there's going to be another letter to those properties that were in question on the assessments. Those properties that had changes to their assessments will or did receive a letter, and the remaining properties will not receive a letter, just the ones that had changes. So I hope Jennifer puts something about it in there, because people are wondering if there's going to be letters. Well, they should know that, because,
If they have questions, they can call the city office
Yeah.
and talk to Kelsey.
talk to Kelsey, yeah. All right? Okay, we'll go on to 4. Proposed additions or deletions to the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Discussion? Roll call.
Councilmember Nelson,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Schuldes,
Aye.
Butterfield,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Aye.
and Osk.
Aye.
6 ayes, 0 noes.
That passes. Under regular business, we have the authorization to solicit proposals from executive recruiting firms. Leslie?
Yes, good evening, council. Police Chief Felt has provided his letter of resignation for his retirement, and effective October 18th. So we have a short window here, but we would propose that we hire an executive search team for this position, because it is a critical undertaking here and requires a thorough and strategic approach. Given the importance of this role to ensure the safety and security of our community, staff are requesting that the city council authorize this and engage an outside firm for helping this hiring process. Justifications, of course, of hiring this firm would be to the expertise in recruitment, a broader reach we'd also like to have, and the objectivity and confidentiality that goes along with this, and then the time efficiency that they would provide us.
Okay.
Any questions?
Any questions from the council? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion to authorize.
I have a question.
Okay, Mike?
Why don't we just try to see if we have the people right here? I mean, why do we have to go on a search? I've been part of a search before, and it didn't work out so well. And I'd like to hear from the chief and what he thinks, if that's possible.
It's not my council meeting, it's the mayor's.
What do you want from the chief? I think that's putting him in kind of a different,
Well, you're asking to go outside. I think he has the people. I think he has quality people that we can hire right here. And I just want to see what he has to say. Does he agree with this search?
go ahead, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. First of all, you know, Ms. Valiant and I, in talking about my retirement, have not spoken in depth about an executive search. I know that she expressed an interest in doing that and had mentioned it. I guess I would urge the council to consider when you're thinking about this is that if you look at the police department that we have, hopefully we have served the way you've asked us to serve over the past several years here, and recognizing that as a chief, I may climb to the top of the tree and point at times, but there's an awful lot of people below that do the work every day and carry out those missions. As part of the police department, we've been working very hard over the past several years to build leadership within our department. In looking at the job description for the police chief that was just recently okayed by the police commission, it was left unchanged but was reviewed by the police commission last week. We have 5 people that fit the qualifications underneath that they could qualify for it. Now, whether they would all apply or be interested in it, I don't know. I believe that there are some that are, and I know there are some that do not have that interest. But keeping that in mind, I've worked for a department that's hired an outside chief, and it was a case where it was difficult. It was kind of disruptive to the department and that type of thing. I've also worked where it's been a transition from a person within. Generally, that has caused less anxiety and less discourse in the department. You're kind of hiring a known quantity. But again, this is a decision for you to make. I feel that we have some qualified people if they're not within our department. I don't think you have to cast the net very far to find some in the region, even within the county. And there's always the Minnesota Chiefs of Police Association has the ability to send out job notices within the entire state too, if that would be something that the council would like also. But I guess thank you for a few things on that, but that's kind of my feeling on it.
All right. Thank you, Chief. Oh, my goodness. So I've got Justin.
Am I good?
You? Okay. Justin, go
Okay,
ahead.
Thank you. And thank you, Chief, and happy early retirement. I mean, not that you're retiring early, but I'm saying to you early, happy retirement. And thank you for all the service that you've done in your department as well. I appreciate knowing that there are 5 officers that could be solid internal candidates. Would look forward to seeing hopefully all of them apply if that's something that they would desire. At the same time, I certainly believe that we owe it to the citizens of Willmar for a job this important to cast the net as wide as possible. If there's a better candidate out there, it would be great to find it. If one of those internal candidates is the best candidate, I have no doubt that their rise to the top. And so I would offer a motion to authorize city staff to solicit proposals from recruiting firms for the police chief position.
I'll second that.
Okay, we got a motion and a second discussion. We go to Audrey.
Okay. I have a great deal of respect for you. You've been here a long time. It's very nice to hear that you've got multiple officers that are interested in this position. I do, however, agree with what Councilmember Osk said, that we owe it to our community to hire the best person that we can. And I think that as long as you've been here, perhaps it would be a great opportunity to see who would be interested in this position, both internally and externally. And I very much support us looking for a recruiting firm and taking the opportunity to rebuild or build the best department that we can for our community.
Vicki?
Well, while I respect your opinions, I am in disagreement because I feel like we have a good police staff here, and they know our community, they know our area, they know each other, they know how things work here, and I think the transition will be much smoother if we hire from within. And also, I think, what is it telling our officers here if we hire from outside? I just think it sets a bad precedent. It says we don't respect you. That's how I feel. So.
All right, Tom?
Jim, when you applied for the chief of police, how did the city do it back then? Did they use an outside firm, or was it done internally? You know, when they were looking, yes.
We didn't have a firm, no. He came up through the ranks.
Yeah, if it's okay to answer, what they did when I became chief of police, they did go to an outside firm. I know they cast the net pretty wide. They had somebody from, I remember specifically from NYPD apply. They had somebody from near Rapid City, South Dakota, a number from the Twin Cities, and they ended up with the local kid anyway. You know, I don't know what they spent, but it took extra time to do that. You know, there was some cost that went with it. I don't have any idea what that was. I was, you know, simply an applicant at that time.
What year was that?
2014. So.
And then, if I recall right, Jim, you started off as a bicycle officer, patrol person, entry level, part-time while you're going to school?
Right, yep, as a
And then
college
now he's gone from being a bicycle cop to chief of police. Local boy, been here for years and years and years. We hire local, they're gonna be here years and years and years, and we don't have to worry about 2-3 years about the next one bailing ship. They already have their roots established here in Willmar. And if Jim thinks that we have a few people here locally and within the surrounding areas that could fill this, I think that would be our best bet.
Carl?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I would agree with Vicki and Tom. I feel like we don't need to cast the net wide. The grass is rarely greener. Sure, maybe we could find some very qualified candidates, but I feel like the people here deserve a shot first. And if it turns out that the police commission isn't happy with anybody that applies locally, okay, then we can expand it statewide. And if we still don't, then we can look nationwide. But we're also here tonight to try to save money, cut down costs. Why spend the money on this if we don't have to?
Okay. Anything else?
Mayor?
Mike?
Mayor?
You're in law enforcement in a community. It takes you not days, not weeks, not days, not months, or years. It takes you years to get acclimated with your community. In my position, I worked with all law enforcement. And I can tell you that when somebody comes in that's not familiar with your area, you struggle, and you struggle a long time. And it comes back to haunt you, I'll guarantee you. But like I say, when I worked with, I've been all over them. When I worked in law enforcement, when they brought somebody in that wasn't from the area, we just absolutely scrambled. We had really a lot of issues. And that's what I think. Willmar is special. It's not for anybody just to come in from New York City or Brooklyn or Washington or wherever. It takes somebody that knows this place and knows the different agencies and knows the people. And that's what I say, this is definitely at home. Keep it home.
All right, Audrey?
I'm really concerned, but I want to understand the hiring process. The city council has the authority to hire department directors. That's what you are, is one of those. So the city council still will make the decision on the hiring process. Will you work with human resources? Will you work with the city administrator? What role does the police commission and who else will play a role in that hiring process? I just have a concern that we are not, that we're too inward focused right now, that we need to be brave enough to look for the next best person to be here. If that's internal, then that person will rise through the process. But to just be closed and say we're only going to look internally, I have a real concern about that. You've been here for a long time. This community has changed immensely in the time that you were here. I don't know anything about anybody other than with that. What does your department run like internally? I don't understand why we wouldn't be open to wanting to look and see who the best person would be to replace you. And I worry about that. I worry if there's something that we are afraid of, that, you know, Willmar is a great place. There's a lot of great places. But to keep such a closed environment is very concerning. So I would like an explanation of, if we don't hire a search firm, how this hiring process will go. Will the city administrator or administration be involved? Will human resources be involved? How will the postings go if we're only, you know, I'm really concerned that we are not being brave enough to open up and see what's available, to have the best person that we can.
Vicki?
Couple things. First of all, if you look at the county, the sheriff is always local, and people vote for the sheriff.
We don't do that.
I know that, but I'm saying there's a reason for that.
No.
I think it's because it's good to have local people in that position. And also, if we want help to hire a new chief of police, maybe we can use Vinna to help us.
Use who?
Vinna Resources, their HR firm.
That's what we're talking about.
I know,
is
but I
looking for
want to hire a
proposal.
local company to help us find local people, because you're worried how the process would go.
What we're suggesting is an authorization to solicit proposals. They could be a proposal.
For people outside.
No, it doesn't say that. It says recruiting firms. It doesn't say someone outside. It doesn't. But I really would like an answer. If we don't hire someone, what is the hiring process? And how will people be involved in it?
I'll let Justin go first, and then I can
Okay,
answer that.
Justin.
Okay. I was interested for the
Oh.
answer too, but that's, I'll join Councilmember Nelson in expressing concern over this. I mean, honestly, it strikes me a lot as nepotism, that we wouldn't owe it to this special community of ours to go out and find the best candidate. And again, if that best candidate's an internal candidate, that's going to rise up. That person's going to be the next chief, and that'll be something we can all celebrate. Councilmember Davis is right. When it comes to sheriffs, there's an election. Since the citizens of our community don't get to vote for sheriff, I would think that, you know, that should be something that we all take very seriously as their elected representatives. And for us to narrow the amount of candidates by not even considering someone that's not a current member of the police department is striking to me. I'm also concerned that one of the things I think we need an outside HR firm to help us with, and if it's a local firm, great, I'd be more than happy to see a local firm, but I think we need a firm because of the 8 of us that sit on this council. We have 2 members of retired law enforcement that know our law enforcement, you know, really well. We have another member who's married to someone from the department. There's conflicts of interest on the 8 of us. We bring, the 3 of us bring us great insights, but you also have relationships with the people that we're talking about here. I think we need someone from the outside to come in and to lead this so this can be a well-done, unbiased search, and the citizens of this community end up with the best possible chief that they can get.
Leslie?
The way I see this process, and I ask Director Sietsema and Director Bosk also to jump in and correct me if my steps are wrong, but I would say that if this is going to be conducted internally, it'll still be an outward post. Our HR director will post it outwardly. It'll not be just an inward post like that, because I don't think that's fair to anybody else that probably is in our county that has the right qualifications. So we would want to post it outside of our office. Then from there, we would probably do some investigative work as far as processing the applicants that do come in. It would probably be I would say a 3-week process in order we would want to keep it open for 3 weeks to try to get as many candidates as possible. From there, then we will review those internally and we would score them as far as their qualifications. They would be a blank score. Nobody would know who they are. They would be given a number, so nobody would be able to know who they are based on their qualifications. They would have to get scored based on certain qualifications that would be put down on a score sheet. From there, then, we would have to also conduct background checks through a company. So we would have to hire an outside firm to do those background checks because we could not ask our police department to do those background checks. That just would not be correct in doing that. And then from there, then I would say then we would pull probably the top 4 candidates and ask for interviews from that, after that. As far as the interview process, I would say that it would be probably 2 council members, maybe, a police commissioner, myself, Mr. Box, and Ms. Sietsema. If that's how we would go internally. Anything I left out? Thank you.
One more thing.
Mike?
I'd like to comment on Councilman Oss's comment about law enforcement families. This has got nothing to do that I'm in law enforcement, wasn't law enforcement. It's got everything to do that I've seen supervisors brought in that were the wrong people and that did not belong there and did not come from Minnesota. I've seen this happen. I've seen it here. I've seen it happen. It's got nothing to do, the reason I'm fighting like this has got nothing to do with my background. It's got everything to do with what I've been through over the years. And I just want this city to be healthy, period.
Can I ask a follow-up comment or question to Councilmember O'Brien?
Yes, go ahead.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate your passion for it. I appreciate that you want the right person. I think everyone at this table does. Why would you narrow the search for who that right person is by only wanting it open to internal candidates?
I have learned that internally, if you've got the people, don't bypass them. Give them a chance.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got the right people, give them a chance, because if you pass them up, you probably won't get them again.
Isn't this how we find out if we have the right people?
You can do it too by letting the chief, he knows who his people are. He should be on that, as far as I'm concerned. He should be on that committee, because he is a person that's been around a long time, and he knows exactly what these people are made of. And they can lead, the leaders in this community, who they are, in the law enforcement community. I'm just saying, like you said, Commissioner Schultz, we're looking at money. What's this going to cost us to do this?
We don't know till we get the proposals back.
I'm in a committee right now with municipal utilities. Let me tell you, it's not cheap.
It's an investment.
It's an investment.
It's an investment.
So why did your Committee on Municipal Utilities choose to go this direction?
That wasn't my decision. I am a representative of the council on that.
Uh-huh.
And they brought me in as a representative of the council. But it was already a done deal when we got there, but I was asked to sit on the committee.
Mm-hmm.
And we're still doing it because we're going around and around and around because we got the wrong person.
Well,
And now we got to go again because now we got to go back through all of this, all over again. I don't know. Can't get too much into this, but I will tell you that we've got a lot of work to do.
Mm-hmm.
Audrey?
I just find it interesting that you're sort of basically saying that all internal candidates succeed. And I don't understand why we don't want to look for the best person and help that person succeed, whether that's internal or external. Because I don't believe all internal candidates succeed. And we want to set ourselves up to have the best department that we can. And also, I don't believe it would be appropriate for Chief Felt to to be the decision maker for the next police chief. He's retiring. He's done. He's leaving. This is a decision for the people that are going to be here after he is gone. He's been very successful with what he's done, but it's not his decision with what should happen next.
Tom?
One thing about this is, I think our Human Resource Department can reach out further than Willmar. There's multiple avenues they can go, from Indeed to what Jim said, the State Police Commission has opportunity to put this out. There's colleges that have resource officers, for hiring department that the city can reach out to and put a notice out. They'll go out and put it out to all the police officers that wants to change. There's other avenues. We're just not going internal local. We're just going to keep the hiring process as first time as local. It's not hard. We put it out on Indeed, somebody searching for to move up in police departments is going to pop up on their search engine that we're looking. I think the city of Willmar can do this job, do it correctly, get it out there, where, yeah, we may not be reaching people out in New York, but we may be reaching people down in Rochester, Minnesota, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Then I think the city of Willmar can do this, and it's just not going to be an internal hiring process. The city of Willmar can go other avenues and do this.
I had reservations about this also, but I had a conversation this morning with Justin and Leslie. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Kyle. But I listened to your arguments, and I'm really not sure which way we should go. And I think that goes back to some of what Mike said. The last time we went, well, it isn't the last time we went, because I forgot that the council, I wasn't on it at the time you were hired
3 times.
as the chief. That was in 14. I was not there. But previous to that, we had a chief come in from outside, and I think that's what you referred to, too, Chief. It wasn't a good situation all the way around. And that's got me, sorry, I'm going to say gun shy. But I'm glad don't give me a tie vote tonight. I'm not sure. I wish I could give you some hard, fast stuff that would help you make a decision, but I can't. Justin.
One more question.
Yeah, I
The
just
chief.
wanted to say, I love the story about how Chief Felt was hired. I love the story about starting off, on a bike and making your way up to chief. And I love that when you became chief, you knew that you were the best candidate. You knew that we looked as far as New York City, and you were still the best. I hope whoever takes over after you can know the same thing and not know that they just happened to be the best within one zip code, but they were absolutely the best from the entire search. And whether that's going to be from a search firm or whether it's going to be our city staff doing it, I'm realizing that most of this debate actually is irrelevant to the motion. We seem to be questioning whether it should be an internal or an external search, and the motion's for a search firm. So I'll refocus us a little bit on that. But I hope whoever gets to take over after you, I hope they feel like you did when you got that job a few years back.
Audrey, I will call on you here in a second, but did you have something you wanted to say? No? Oh, I thought you said.
I'm just going to ask, you mentioned the Chiefs Association. Could you probably help us out with this as well?
Yes, the Minnesota Chiefs of Police Association, when they found out that I was retiring, they reached out, and that was one thing that they offered, that they can send out the information statewide to executive level staff, not just chiefs, but commanders, lieutenants, captains, that type of thing, to assist with the search if the city wished. So.
All right. Audrey?
I still support soliciting proposals for an executive recruiting firms. I think we're a large enough community that our community deserves it. However, if we do not vote to do an outside executive recruiting, the process that's been described is very much an open process, inclusive of using human resources and our administration, and opening it up to search beyond just our internal candidates. And if an internal candidate rises to the top, wonderful. But if we find someone that is best for our community, that's our job, is to find the best person to replace you, replace Chief Felt. And that's my concern. And whether we do it through an outside firm or we utilize our staff and put out proposals for that, it just needs to be an open process.
The chief just said that we can go to the Chiefs Association, and it'll be across a broader,
That's the posting. That's the posting the position,
yeah.
which we would do, because we will also post it on the League of Minnesota Cities. We do post to any of our directors, whatever association that would be, like the Planners Association, we do post at all of those.
I have a quick question for.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, if we approved this motion, it would be, it's a request for proposals. So we
Yeah.
can get those proposals, we can see what they cost as to Councilmember O'Brien and Schulter's cost concerns. It could be a local firm, as Councilmember Davis has stated her preference for. We could select one or none of those at that time once the proposals came back. Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. Everybody understands? Any more discussion, or are you ready to vote?
Will you repeat the motion?
The motion is to authorize staff to solicit proposals for recruiting firms for police chief position.
All right. Roll call.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Schultes.
No.
Butterfield.
No.
O'Brien.
No.
Osk.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
3 ayes, 3 noes. It's a tie vote.
I'm going to, I think what Justin just said a little while ago, where we can get the proposals and we can make a decision at that time, so I'm gonna vote in favor.
So 4 ayes is 3 noes.
All right?
Thank you, council. Good discussion.
We're to, what's that?
I just got one question.
Okay.
So in the meantime, can the city still go out and start searching, or are we just gonna be on hold until?
We'll be on hold.
Okay.
All right, budget discussions, and do I just call on you, Tom? Okay.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Since our August 28th work session, and then the following council meeting after that, the council approved a preliminary levy of 9.3% of an increase of our tax levy. The first page in your packet is just kind of showing a tax levy comparison from 2024 to 2025 proposed. And it just breaks down of where the increases are coming from. You'll see the tax levy about halfway down, the operations and CIP is going up about $254,630. So that line, so this is what's making up the increases. On the very far right, the percent of tax levy increase, we were at 9.3%. There were a few recommendations provided by council that staff agreed to, and we just adjusted it. So now, as we sit today, is at 8.58% increase in the levy. So you can see on that page of what is making up the increases of the levy. It's kind of split between the operations and CIP, the equipment certificate, and then our debt service. So that's just for your information. The staff did adjust about $73,000 out of the tax levy. If you flip over to the revenue page, we were made aware that we were awarded a $25,000 grant for money from Blue Cross Blue Shield to help out with our cultural diversity events that our Director of Cultural Diversity puts on annually. So that will help offset some of the levy. And then we also adjusted on the expenses side. There was a clerical error in one of our departments, so we adjusted that. And then our fire department, we were able to take our training line down per the contract for our safety program that the city utilizes. Our public works department, there was an other line that was able to come down by $7,000. RAC took a small increase, our local option, or local cable went down $2,300, and then our Parks and Rec and their small tools went down by $10,000. And the directors, we met last week to go over these as well. So as it sits right now, we are down to about 8.58% tax levy increase. We did receive other comments from the council, but we didn't feel we could act on them until there was more discussion on them, more consensus before we brought any different numbers to the council. So with that, I don't know if we want to just open up for the general discussion right off the bat, or if there were any specific questions the council has for staff.
Council? Doesn't look like there's any.
Audrey?
All right, Audrey?
There is a revenue breakdown in here for city facilities. Would you mind just going over that, or is that not yours?
Sure, yeah. The Parks and Rec Director did put this together as requested at a previous work session, just kind of breaking down what facilities bring in. So on the left-hand side would be really our rental income. So it breaks it down by the Civic Center, our drive floor events, which is also at the Civic Center. Our it breaks down like baseball, surf, or softball, turf fields, shelter rent. So it breaks down what is making up our revenues. Then it also goes into the pool. There's a 23 versus 24. I know there was discussion about potentially raising maybe the cost to get in, and then also our community center and our other adult and youth programs. So it kind of breaks down what's making up all the revenues. And then also this year, one thing to note that he pointed out, this is through September 12th, and the fourth quarter revenues for programs are not reflected in here. And he's pretty confident that they will be where budgeted or exceeding that.
Audrey?
Yeah, just a quick comment. I know the community center, it looks like the revenue was $50,000. But our budget has doubled in 2 years out there, or the expenses have doubled in 2 years out there. And just a question with kind of the process for what we're doing or what we're receiving for rent, or I know I just saw another posting for a position out there, and just curious about the staffing and the growth in expenses with that. I don't know if anybody wants to talk about that or not.
I do know that the cost of the salaries has increased and the programming has increased, and that has been addressed and is going to be continually addressed as the general supplies line has come into question, and that has come down from the original ask from the community center.
Okay.
But that is, the director is well aware of that.
All right. Thank you.
Justin?
When was the last time we raised the costs for DOAC? Do you know? The admission cost of $3?
It's been $3. I'm sorry if I can answer that. I'm sorry.
Please.
Since it opened.
Okay.
And that's part of the charter with the Dorothy Olson Foundation to keep it affordable for
change
all
that.
families. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we can, but that was part of her deal with this, was she wanted to keep it affordable for all
Right.
families. But I believe it's been a $3 general admission since it opened.
It's the best deal in town then, considering
It is.
inflation these
It
last
is.
couple of years.
And the prices at concessions have gone up significantly during that time, and that's a big moneymaker, but
Are there season passes also available?
Yes.
yes, there are, and I think those have gone up, and I guess I don't know on that.
And I guess I also, just in that same general area of the revenue budget, I mean, I get that we're being conservative when we're budgeting, but it looks like, in my opinion, we're being really conservative. I mean, we're dropping, what we made in 2023 by, 15,000. We assuming that no one wants to go to DOAC anymore?
We had a short season this year because the pool was shut down for at least the first 2 weeks, due to the issue that we were having with the pump and such, so, and then we had to drain the pool again and clean it out again. So we had a shortened season.
And a
Basically.
lot of rain.
Yep, these are actual numbers.
These are
from-
actual numbers.
Yes, these are
Correct.
actual numbers.
Work on season passes.
Tom, go ahead.
Don't quote me on this in season pass, but I think it was $25. I bought my son one last year, and I think I paid $25 for a season pass. He went 2 times, so city made money off of us.
Thank you.
Did you buy one this year?
I didn't buy him one this year.
See, there you go.
Didn't have time with baseball and everything else.
So we certainly can address the cost so this would come up, these changes in fees and that will come up when we do the fee schedules? So we certainly can look at it then. We certainly won't be able to raise it enough to get 50% up, but it would be something.
Kyle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for to update the council on the 2024 fee schedule for the Aquatic Center. Individual season pass is $90, family of 2 through 6 follow along, $135, $145, $155, $165, and $175 for a family of 6. So, and then $3 for the daily admission.
Audrey?
Are we going to review the sheets that you passed out with requests from council members?
Yeah, we can do that. So starting at the top, this is going to go by department. So the first department would be the mayor and council, and the question was on the printing and publishing line, why the increase, and the justification or the reason for the dollar amount was that is the line item where the branding expenses, if there were any future branding expenses, that's where that would come from. And this is, as Mr. Box has alluded to in the past, this is as we buy a new vehicle, it might need new decals. It isn't going to go and look for things, but this is as we need new decals or branding opportunities. And I believe that is the same as our 2024 budget. Correct. The City Hall, the office supplies question, this, as we consolidated our accounts with City Hall, with our new financial enterprise ERP, all of the departments that are housed within City Hall is centralized office supplies budget, so all of our departments use the centralized office supplies GL code. So that is the reason that it has increased over the years. But so conversely, the individual departments have not budgeted for office supplies. Human resources, there is a request to increase our human resources part-time employee up to 30 hours a week. And with that, that would allow this individual to, or the person to get health insurance as well as other insurances. So the increase in that is associated, most of the increase would be associated with the insurances with that position. And cultural diversity, the question was, is there a specific event for next year for the civic promotion? And so every year there are expenses that are associated with several events that the director puts on in that department. We do have some city costs, but we also do receive money from outside sources, grants, as well as donations to help the city put on these events. We still have to code these expenses somewhere. And conversely, we do have a revenue, and we did recognize an extra $25,000 in revenue for 2025 as a part of the Blue Cross Blue Shield money that we are being awarded for next year. The police department salaries was a question that was brought up at the last work session in August. We are currently short-staffed, so the potential recommendation would be to reduce by 2, saving roughly $250,000. We would recommend as staff not to reduce that line or reduce the number of officers. Years past has shown that we are not over budgeting that salary line within the police department as it is. As an employee gets, if they retire or resign from the department, we do pay them eligible sick vacation comp out as per contract or the city handbook. And also if we have any settlements that need to be paid out as salary, that would also impact that GL on our budget. So we do not recommend as staff to remove any salary line from the police department.
Tom?
Yes.
If I could too, it's my understanding that the SROs are not necessarily a done deal. They may be coming back. I mean, that's an if, but that's not a permanent reduction. So if they come back, then all of a sudden that's 4 more officers again. So it'd be another argument against it.
I've heard the opposite. Is there anything official in conversations from Dr. Adams or the school board?
Not with me.
I have spoken with Dr. Adams about it. There is continued interest in doing so. It's just that they knew for sure that it would not be available in the 2024-2025 school year because of where they had allocated their monies already. But,
okay.
There's no commitment by the school for sure for next year, but they are hopeful, and we have expressed our strong interest. We would love to get back into the schools as soon as we have the manpower and they're able to facilitate that too.
Possible the school board can give us an answer on that before we're finalizing budget plans?
I can ask.
That'd be good.
Audrey?
I would just request that, kind of the same thing, that our administration perhaps make that call to find out what their thoughts are for this year or even for next year. Or for next year, next school year, excuse me.
Right.
I'll continue on with within the police department still, but it's the awards. This has come up across multiple departments, so we did a little analyzation of awards for the object code. Typically, these have been years of service awards, and we've been dividing those expenses amongst the eligible departments. Randomly, I guess the police officers would get plaques, small awards here and there. The fire department does a couple specific awards for the fire department, such as Rookie of the Year, Firefighter of the Year, and a Leadership Award. And then, as I said, the Years of Service Awards that we do at our annual company picnic for longevity. We did look at all of the years of service that are going to be eligible for this next year, and we can get you a little bit harder answer, but so that number might be able to come down a hair. I don't know if we have an exact dollar amount right now, but it's pretty close citywide. We might just be able to adjust certain departments up and down. But that's typically what the awards are for outside of the fire department. The safety program with the fire department, as I alluded to earlier on, is our Safe Assure contract. So we were able to bring that original number down a little bit from the 14,500 down to 11,000. Public Works, the overtime was in question. Why did the OT go up so much? The 2025 budget is the same as the 2024 budget at 65,000. We do have historic figures in there. The last couple winters, as you recall, though, have been fairly mild. So it's all a question. I'd say the overtime column is going to play in large, the weather will play a large factor in that. And then at the same time, if employees choose to comp hours versus take cash overtime, that's up to the employee. So it all depends on the employee who's working the overtime. So that is an unchanged budget request from 2024. The line item other, this was a decrease that was discussed amongst administration and director, Public Works director. This did come down from 12,000 to 5,000, decreasing it by 7. The RAC, the conference and travel, this we did look at previous year's expenses for this individual to go to conferences and travel. So we did keep that in there. It did reduce a little bit, but this is also an opportunity when this individual goes to the conference to get better pricing on some upgrades that are necessary for the city. So it's a good investment for the conferences to continue. I think one is travel and one is within the state, but the auditorium utilities, we're looking at previous years. We did decrease it from 50,000 in 2024 down to 40,000 budgeted for 2025. Parks and Rec, the employer pension, I would say the biggest part of the employer pension was the part-time salaries. The part-time of $190,000 in part-time wages with the payroll taxes with the FICA Medicare, and as well as a couple of the positions do pay into para because of their longevity with the city, that they don't maybe have a para exclusion anymore. So 25,000 is just for the part-time alone, as well as our overtime for our full-time staff. So, and then I just looked right now, we are about 88% of budget in 2024 on that line. So this is a more accurate representation of what the city will be spending in the pension expense in the Parks and Rec department. The small tools line item, the director of Parks and Rec did agree to come down from 50 to 40, adjusting it by 10,000. The awards, I misspoke earlier. The awards from Parks and Rec, also with this, the adult league winning teams get T-shirts now instead of a plaque. It's branded. It can be also like an advertisement, the director was saying. So this is something that they give away to each individual on the team versus just a single plaque for the entire team. The rents line item, we touched on this last work session. The Parks and Rec department is taking over all the mini BIF rentals from Public Works. They used to each do it. Now it's centralized in the Parks and Rec department. So the Public Works took a decrease in that line, and the Parks and Rec department took the increase. Net, I think it increased just a little bit total on the rents, but Parks and Rec also had their own mini BIFs before. So it's a decrease from one department and increase in the other. And then the community center general supplies line item, recommend going down to 20,000 from 25. So those are some of the rationale for some of the questions that were submitted to staff from council.
Audrey?
Just to follow up on these, if I'm tracking correctly, some of them you've done, and some of them are you still asking for direction on? Or in particular, the HR one? I know we talked about not doing that last time, but I don't know if that was a decision, or is it, I lost it now, or is it on here even?
The first page.
Yeah.
We have not addressed that one. We were going to wait for council to have discussion on that, or if they wanted to hear from staff, from the director as well. We did take action on fire department, public works, the RAC, and Parks and Rec for a total of, and then also the cultural diversity, we're at a clerical error in there, a total of $48,000 in decreases. But a lot of these that we just discussed have not changed from the preliminary budget.
So we asked for a question on the SROs. When, will that be next meeting then, or what are we?
Yes, the next time, or the next
Okay.
time we have the budget discussion.
Okay.
Yep. Would you like to hear from our HR director in regards to the staffing?
Justin?
I'm just wondering procedurally, I mean, I understand when you hear from one council member, that doesn't mean anything, right? You need us to have a majority. I mean, are we looking for motions and votes tonight on going through on all of these?
I don't think so, because we also have to finalize the insurance numbers. So we really want to finalize the insurance numbers that we're getting in, so that we have a truer picture of where we are at. We want to make sure what we have budgeted in for the insurance lines
Sure.
is enough.
I understand
And
that.
if not, we might have to pull from other departments
Yep.
to cover the insurance lines.
So I guess my question comes down to, let's continue the conversation with human resources. How do you as staff want to know what we think up here? We just individually,
Well, I guess we want maybe to provide a broader insight to you on what really happens and what kind of work this staff person does. I think it's important that you understand what that staff person does and the meaning of what her job is and that. So that's why I was thinking that maybe you want to hear from our HR director as to why she feels that this need is an increase in regards to that.
for sure. I'm just wondering when it comes time to decide if we're going to cut this or leave it in, how we make that decision.
Well, maybe there's other things that we could cut instead of the HR department too.
For any of these things, how do we find, so Councilmember Nelson says, I want to cut 30 grand out of whatever, and the rest of us think that's a terrible idea. How do we, if we're not voting on this, are you waiting till 4 of us say yes to something, or how does this work? I'm assuming you're going to have terrible ideas later in this meeting.
Only
Not
if
your
I
idea.
speak after you.
As long as it's not your idea. I would say that, we will we can put some harder numbers to everything, and then maybe at that point in time when we want to, I would say, we talked about that we would probably just finalize this budget probably during a regular council meeting, because I think we're very close in that regard. I would personally like to see where it just is right now, because I think that the tax levy itself, the tax rate is only going to increase by what percent? About 2%, the tax rate. We've worked very hard to get it under 9%. And I think that, through this whole process also, I want to remember, we've looked at past budgets, corrected budgets and made some adjustments, because like we said, in the past, if we all look through the audits, we've had departments that are over budget. And when you see that time and time again, there needs to be a budget correction. And so that's what we've basically this year, a lot of these accounts have been budget corrections. But we also, if you go back to that first page that Mr. Owens walked you through, just the general operating and CIP, that's that 450,000 that we've talked about, that alone is only an increase of 2-point-some% interest, or 2%. So I think, overall, majority of the increase comes down to our equipment certificate that we've added. It's also the street levy of 2.4%. That makes up the 8.58%. So equipment certificate is 2.96. City Hall is 0.43. We know we want to continue that. We want to, because we've got it in the past budget, so we don't want to drop it. And street levy is 2.24. So the rest of it, just the 2.95, is just a small increase for operations and the CIP of $450,000, which is something else that we've talked about, that we have to continually try to increase that, because we know, just in your capital improvement sheets that we've provided, the requests annually are close to $2 million. And we have to try to get that into our normal budget process. Trucks and cars are not inexpensive anymore. A plow truck is $290,000. Well, that's close to, in your budget process, that's close to almost 2% of your tax rate, if you want to look at it that way. So every $195,000 is a percent of your tax rate.
I think, back to my original comments, I think my intent for tonight and my desire would still be that we're cutting from where we're at right now and trying to get a consensus from where my colleagues are at would be helpful.
Where would you like us to be at?
I think that's a difficult number to come up with right now, and I appreciate the work that's gone into it. And as we get deeper into this, there aren't easy cuts. There's nothing in this budget that is bad, right? And so I think it's our job at this table to try to evaluate, nothing is luxurious, nothing is bad. It's just, how do we balance that with the interests of our constituents and the taxpayers of this community, trying to find what's right for them as well. So I'm certainly interested in hearing from our Human Resources Director, because that would be the top of my list as well, as I'm looking for things to cut here. So.
Did you want to speak, Leanne?
Thank you. So I prepared some information ahead of time, just because when I was thinking about the request, I didn't just do it because it's like, oh, let's just put some more hours in HR, right? So I'm just going to read what I put together, because I meant to get this to you. I just didn't get it to Mr. Box on time. So the increase in Human Resources Department hours and the current metrics that I've got some metrics that I looked at through the League of Minnesota Cities to kind of see, in cities that have the similar full-time equivalents as far as numbers of employees as we have, plus the influx of the summer seasonal staff, and this year all of the election judges and everything, all of that, onboarding, offboarding, all of that. And just the sheer size of the department itself is like 1.5, a little bit, maybe a little bit 1.55 for us. Most of the other cities that had similar size FTEs were 3 or 2.5, and so, it's not an exorbitant amount, but there's also been a lot of increases in the more, complex compliance issues that come up with HR. The city's only had human resources since 2017, so there's been like a learning curve and a growing that's needed to happen. There are, policies and procedures and things that needed to be updated or written for the first time, and also just learning all the different departments and how we can assist, because there's a lot of things that we need to make sure that we know what's happening so that things are being done according to legal practice and all of that. And so, and not every director is going to know those things unless they have us partnering with them. So in order to free me up and give me more time to do those kinds of things, that was part of the impetus as well. And this isn't just for a person, this is for a position, because right now, I mean, I have a person in that position, but if I was going to try to replace the position, I think having that number of hours and that work's not going to go away is important. And I also think it would be, for recruiting purposes, it would be beneficial to have the benefits along with it. So those were the couple of things that I looked at. I did come up with numbers. I had the job description attached and all these things, so I can probably get this stuff out to you guys too as you're considering what you'd like to do with the position.
Audrey?
Couple of things that you said. Would you be better off with 2 part-time people so you don't have to pay benefits and you could flex that time and have, more hours, or from that standpoint versus when you look at the difference that when someone goes over 30 hours, what you pay in benefits? I don't know. I'm just asking that, is that a possibility to do 2 20-hour people?
It probably would be. I mean, my concern is just finding somebody who wants to only work 20 hours a week. And then the other issue is that it would probably be a wash. If you think about it, the cost that they're saying for the benefits is about $20,000, $25,000. I'd pay more than that for another staff person to work half-time.
Tom?
About how many hours is that department putting in per week?
My department,
Yep.
we have a full-time person and we have a .5 person.
Yeah, how many hours per week are you guys averaging? About 60, 70, 80 hours a week? Between both of you guys, what are you guys averaging?
I'm an exempt employee, so we don't track hours on mine. I don't have a number for you for that, but I know her hours because she punches in and out on a time clock, which non-exempt employees have to do. So I mean, definitely working more than 80 hours a pay period. So, and she works about 26 a week. So so she's really, it's only adding like 8 hours to her schedule right now instead of 10 per pay period.
What's your desire? Justin?
Just, one of the comments you made is that this is a relatively new department, 2017, you said, and so there's been a lot of front-loaded work for that. You were saying like there were policies and procedures that had to be created for the very first time. I'm assuming now that those have been done, I would assume quite the opposite then, that now you're free to do other things, knowing that front-loaded stuff as you're getting a department started has been done. And I'm also interested, I don't know which council member wrote this, but it sounds like some history of this used to all be done by the city clerk. I'm assuming that the city clerk is not included in your 1.5 FTE for your department?
No, when they hired the human resources director in 2017, that person was there for a couple of years, and then they hired a second one, and they were there for, so there's been some work that has been done and policies that have been created, but of course, the legislature changes things every year. I mean, we've added all the ESST language, now there's the Minnesota paid leave. I mean, there's always changes and updates that have to happen. It's a continual process, and we have to, also, part of our process is to review those policies and procedures every year and make updates and changes as necessary. So yeah, I'm not starting from scratch and rewriting them all the time, but we're also trying to make sure that they're accurate and they're up to date, and then also trying to make sure that the staff are aware of all of them, and because that's a lot of stuff to remember, so just trying to send out just-in-time types of information about all of that, so.
Tom?
After listening to Councilmember Nelson bring up about why not hire another half-time employee, is majority of this time going to be when we have our seasonal ones looking for seasonal part-time employees? Is that what we're really trying to help her out with, or?
No.
Or would that be an option, though?
I don't know. I mean, it's just sheer numbers. It's not just in the summertime. And I can get you the information here unless you want me to go over it with you as far as like the numbers, but I don't think that matters as much as the amount of work that it entails when you have to do the onboarding, offboarding, training. I mean, we're doing benefits, enrollment. I mean, things are happening year-round, so it's not just that time of the year.
Carl?
Does this person, is she just HR work, or is she doing things for other departments as well?
She's an admin assistant for HR. It's just so all of the departments in the city pretty much have an admin assistant, and most of those are full-time.
Okay. Justin?
Do you know the current FTE for the city?
Total,
Mm-hmm.
we're at a 115.
115?
Mhm.
Do you know, I'm really testing you now, so I apologize, but do you know what it was last year?
110.
110?
It's a moving target, just depending on hires and terminations and resignations and,
Sure.
but yeah, and that's full-timers. Then you add on top of that all of the part-timers.
Sure. I guess my question is basically, have we seen a drastic increase in the amount of employees that the city has?
No, not drastic, I wouldn't say.
Okay.
Audrey?
So the figure on the sheet that we have is 119,614. If you didn't add hours onto that staff, what would that figure be?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
The figure that we have shows $119,614. If you didn't add
Is that for the
hours.
full department for staff salaries?
That's what's listed on here. Human Resources salaries, 119,614. If you didn't add hours, how much would that reduce that figure?
Just a clarification, Councilmember Nelson. So the line that you're referring to is for the full-time, for the director's position only. The part-time would be under the 50/20, the temporary, would be the salary, salaries temp,
37,000.
would be 30, yeah.
Okay, so what would it be if you didn't add hours?
That is current, I think, isn't it?
The two figures at the bottom here I see now.
It would probably be a reduction of about $5,700.
There's about, so it's an increase, if these bottom figures then are reflective of the totals before and after? 234,969 or 208,829. So if we didn't do it, there's 20, is that the difference?
I would say the bulk of it would be the insurance.
Yep.
Because as the
Yes.
director.
So that's the 26,000, there it is, deduction, 26,140. I got there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The salary's temp 50/20. That already includes the additional 4 hours to bring
So it's more than that.
that job description up to 30 hours. Currently, she's working 26 hours. And we would bring it up to 30 hours, and so there could be a reduction of about $5,200 in the salaries temporary.
So it'd be about $30,000 if we didn't do
Yes.
this.
Correct.
Okay.
Not a lot.
Justin?
I would just say that my answer for this one right now is not right now, not this year. It's not a forever thing. Maybe it's in 2026, but this would be something I'd like to see removed from the budget before it comes back to us next time.
Kyle? Or Tom, you got anything? Leslie?
See if there's any additional input from the council at this time.
I can't hear you.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, if there's any additional input from the council at this time, specifically for this line item, otherwise we will make note of it and can make that adjustment.
Tom?
After hearing everything that was brought up by everybody, I think I have to agree with Councilmember Osk on this one. I think just with the way inflation's going, everything else is going right now, we need every cent that we can get. I would like to see this put on hold, too, for another year. And I would like to ask Chief Police Felt one question, too.
On this subject?
Well, no, not on this subject, but it's on another one.
Well, let's clear this subject first.
Yeah.
Audrey?
I'm not the person who put this on the sheet but I think in light of where we're at or just the conversations that we've had, I'm probably a no for this year and wait for next year.
Would any other council members like to weigh in on that?
I guess I would agree with that as well. I understand the need, but I also wonder if it can wait another year.
I'm in agreement with that as well.
I couldn't hear you, Vicki.
I said I agree with that as well.
Tom?
Well, we don't.
Tom already,
All right. Tom, you got a question for the chief?
Chief Phil, we talked about this last time about, I think you have 4 new squad cars this year? In the
For
budget?
2024.
Or for coming up out of this budget?
In 2025, I was brought that back to 2.
Oh, you brought it back?
Correct.
And then are we gonna hold on to the other 2?
That is our plan, to retain basically all of our squads right now, because we're, again, per the council's wishes, trying to make them last longer,
Yeah.
get every bit of life we can out of them type thing before we sell them, so.
But that's good to hear. I know we talked about it, I just know exactly where we're at on that. And I think that's the right call. Thanks, Jim.
Carl? I have a question for Justin and/or Tom regarding the overtime. So last winter, let's hope we have another one like last winter, where overtime hours were way down, I'm assuming, on snow removal. What happens though if we have another winter like '98 where you're out plowing every night? What happens to that overtime budget if it doesn't get used? Where does that money go? And then what happens if we have to go way over budget? Where does that money come from?
That's a good question, Councilmember Schultes. If a particular line item isn't used, it isn't, unless directed by the council to be carried over to the next year, it would just go to fund balance. Conversely, if it is over budget, it would come out of fund balance and we'd be spending more than what we're taking in deficit spending. So.
And we can do that? We can deficit spend?
I would say no. That would be cutting into our reserves. So the numbers, this is just a budget. So like you had mentioned, it was a light winter last year, so that we didn't see the need for the significant overtime. But once again, I mean, it's hard to predict for the future, and so.
also, if it goes over, you just hope that you probably have budgeted enough in other line items. It's actually the total balance of our general fund. We just like to keep our budgets by department in line, but it actually is what is the very end balance of the fund that matters, not line by line.
Audrey?
So I know that you track the time for snow removal. You've done a lot of other things. Do you track like the time that you devote to community events? And I know Rockin' Robins was a bit of a rush a couple of times. Did that create overtime issues for your public works staff?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Nelson. We do track overtime for every event, whether that be, like you mentioned, Rockin' Robins, or a showmobile rental, or a traffic signal goes out in the middle of the night, you know, sewer calls, things like that. It's always a moving target, I'll say that, because you don't know how many inches of snow you're going to get. You don't know how many events are going to happen where they would like to use the showmobile on Sunday afternoon. or they rented a shelter and we need to, go clean it, or Rockin' Robbins, you name it. We do track that, and that's all part of that. And then, as Director Oden said too earlier, the employees, because of the contract, they have the option to get paid their overtime or bank it as comp time, and so that's always a tricky one to target as well. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Would it be an option? I don't know if I like it or not, but would it be an option to say that they can't take it cash, that they comp it? No, okay. Yeah, and I don't know if I like that idea anyway, but.
You can.
That's outlined in contract.
Yeah,
No.
okay.
Yep.
Justin?
Can we talk about the library budget, which takes me back in my book, and
No.
it wasn't one that we had set aside on the sheet of before mentioned, but I know we were having some conversation last time we were talking around the budget, that number is higher than it would be required to be.
Sure, I can jump into this, Councilmember Osk. So Administrator Valiant and I had an opportunity to meet with the library. The number that we had discussed last time that we received from the state, that is the minimum amount required for municipalities to fund libraries. There should be a caveat to that. We found out that number has not been adjusted since 2012. So in order to successfully operate a library, I think we can all understand that it takes more than that minimum set by the state to have a successful operation at the library. The budget requests that we received from the library was for an additional 5% over last year's. It's an ask. So if there is direction to come at that 5% or a lower number, that is up to the council's discretion. But I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page on that minimum number that was provided by the state of Minnesota. That has not changed in the last 12 years. So I'll leave it at that.
If I remember right, doesn't the library send the city a letter saying, fund us, pay us this much, and then we make a decision what we're going to?
Yes, yep, we did receive that letter a month or so ago. And that's what we did, bring that up at the last work session at the end of August. We briefly touched on it, and then Administrator Valiant and I met with the library after that. So yes, yeah.
Do you remember the numbers?
It is what is in the budget here, 496, 669.
Almost $500,000.
496,669. That's a 5% increase from last year of 473,018.
I guess again, this is me personally, as one of 8, I'd like to see us hold to last year's budget and not increase by 5%. But I'd also be interested to hear, I think we have a rep on that board, right? Like of how
Yes.
their financials are currently?
Yeah, I missed the last meeting they had. I was dead late
No.
on it when I sent back. But I think there's a state law, though, they have to have an increase. I'm not sure. I was told that
No.
last year.
No, when we met with the library, head librarian there, she said this is just a request. That's what they can do. The state sends out the minimum, which that's what they did too. And like she said, that minimum has not changed for the last 12 years from the state, which is kind of crazy, but that's what they've done. So, so the ask from the library themselves, and they send the same ask and they send the same information to every city that is part of the Pioneer Land Library to make up their entire budget. So they understand that, maybe at times cities' budgets get a little difficult too, but
My request would not be to go down to the state required minimum, just to deny the 5% increased request, which saves us about $23,651.
yep.
Audrey?
I'm switching subjects, though. Looking at, I know we're not talking about CIP, but we're talking about including 450,000 to fund CIP. The figures that you gave us with the changes that you've made so far bring the levy down to 8.58. If we didn't do 450, we did less than that. If we stayed with what, I mean, last year we did 350. How much of a difference does that make? $100,000?
Not quite 1% on the levy.
About 0.5%.
About 0.5%?
Roughly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I understand the concept of, that we have 450,000 to spend in CIP, but looking at the CIP, there's some things that really do need to be done and others that are, how did I hear this? Must-haves versus wants, kind of thing. And so I worry a little about us not making some decisions on that and coming up with a figure that we actually need. But I understand that we can't fund a lot of things that are in there. So I'm not quite sure how other people feel about the CIP.
Kyle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just a general, comment for the council from a operations and planning perspective when it comes to CIP. And not necessarily focused on the 2025 budget, but like I said, from a planning perspective, in order to plan effectively and efficiently for our capital improvement program, ideally, staff would like to see that number eventually continue to climb. So we're not asking the council or not putting the council in a tough situation year over year to look at such a large list of projects and have little funding to fund those projects. So I don't know if it would be a recommendation from staff necessarily to see that number reduced any more than what it is, especially from the sense that we want to continue to grow that number. Last year we spent, CIP was right around 1.1. The year before that was 1.8. So we kind of hover between $1 million plus, between $1 million and $2 million over the last, we'll say 7-8 years.
Yes.
Now we know that some of that was, a lot of that, if not all of that, was deficit spending. But there are needs. Now we have whatever that magic number is in the future, that's for us to continue to work towards. But I just want to make sure from a staff perspective that the council understands, and from a planning perspective as well, that we want to see that number to increase long-term.
Yes, Justin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're considering selling property in Redwood Falls currently, correct?
Yes.
That will come before us.
As soon as we get an appraisal, we'll have a closed session on that.
Okay. I'm assuming do we have a ballpark on that?
No.
No, okay. I'd like to see us, with the sale of that property, those funds aren't required to go anywhere, I'm assuming. Is that right?
Pardon?
The funds from the sale of that property aren't going to be,
They would be put in the general fund.
okay. I'd be interested to have some conversation about spending some of those funds on the CIP, and also the possibility of putting that in the community investment fund to replenish some of those funds that we've deficit spent on in the past. I see that as being a funding source that can offset some of the items that we're talking about tonight. And I think for that reason, I'd be open to Councilmember Nelson's idea about reducing that by about 100,000 as well.
Audrey?
I do, in looking through the CIP, not necessarily some of the things that are in next year's, but going out, just have a real concern about some of the things that weren't funded with the local option sales tax. and kind of that wish list out there that I'm not sure we're going to be able to do, that we need to focus on things that need to be fixed, but not necessarily new things. And, with taking a look at any real improvements in some of those areas maybe just can't be done unless there's another local option sales tax or something else. So I worry about that, but I also worry about getting behind in fixing things at the same time and what brings people to our community. And I think that becomes the challenge, I think, with what are people willing to pay their taxes for? And, are they going to worry if it's 7% or if it's 8% this year? I don't know. But I think we basically said last year we just can't do this again, but I'm not sure with costs how we don't have an increase also. And I know I was at the League of Minnesota Cities retreat last week, and everybody put up on the board what they were doing, and it was all over the place, but it wasn't unusual to see a lot of communities in that 9-10% range that they just don't have any choices. And so where's the balance to keep our community growing, but that people can afford to live in this community?
Along that same line, I want to make sure that we stay the course on City Hall, planning for it, on our streets, continue to do what we're doing, on other facilities, our employees. We need to stay the course. And sometimes it's puts us on the edge, but we got to make sure that we do it. Carl.
I guess I would just echo that too. We need to be really careful and how much we cut back on the CIP. It's part of the reason I think why we're struggling now is because we've kind of kicked the can down the road and we can't keep not funding things. And now all of a sudden stuff falls into disrepair. We can't get new stuff. Eventually, some of this stuff has to get done. And so I think we need to be very careful about being too conservative on what we're doing here. I am all in favor of keeping costs under control as much as possible. I don't know if zero is possible. I know that was a goal, but I just don't see that happening. But I think we just need to be very careful about kicking down the road too much or cutting too much because eventually some of these things, most of these things in the CIP are going to have to be paid, if not this year, next year, 2 years, when it'll be even more expensive. So,
Tom?
I don't know if we can do this or not, but I'll ask the question. We're at 500 what thousand for the city hall?
587 is proposed for 2025.
Okay. So I don't know if we could drop that down, to 500,000 and move the 87 over CIP. And, if it doesn't get used, we can move it back in over to City Hall in a year or two. I don't know if, we could legally do that or not, but is that an option to help with the CIP? That way we'll have the funds, and then when we need to push that money back, we can bring it back to City Hall. And just, we'd have the same amount in the budget, but we'd only be locking in, the 500,000 for the City Hall.
That would be an option. Council could do that, and it would require council action to transfer across funds. But it is possible to do that, correct? Yep.
All right. Where are we at? Justin?
I just had one other thing that I noticed when I was going through the budget that I'd personally, as one of 8, like to see cut and reduced, and that came from Planning and Development, the $100,000 request for professional ad services, I think to promote the comp plan, which is a great thing. And I think I had asked you last time we were here what it might look like if our own staff was doing some of that work as opposed to getting consultants to come in. Again, what I'd personally like to see is it go from 100,000 to 50,000 and leave you some budget to do that. Maybe reduce a little bit of what you were planning or how much outside help you'd get, but would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Councilmember Oz, I appreciate your consideration for the 50,000. What you are looking at with the proposed budget for planning and development is a proactive budget. 100,000 would not limit us to go after certain grants that we can have matching funds for. Currently, we're operating this year on a $10,000 budget, and it's just not enough. You all made the initial investment in completing the comprehensive plan that I know has been a project that has been stale for some time, and so for the last 5 years or so, we're really making great progress on it. I would hate to see that, we're limited in the sources that we can go after and the implementation from a comprehensive plan.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and again, want to see that grow, but going from 10 to 100 in 1 year. Again, there's nothing bad in here. We'd love to fund it all, but trying to balance that with the needs that I think we have heard from our constituents, that we can't just keep doing what we've done in the last year, and at the same time, we have to prioritize the streets, we have to prioritize City Hall, and so trying to balance that is what brings me to that.
Leslie?
Could I suggest that goes to 75,000? Instead of the 100,000, we'll drop it down to 75, because, of course, we don't know what projects are going to come out of it right now, but I would, until the comprehensive plan is done, and that won't be presented to the council probably until, well, final won't be done until January, February, first part of February. But I would like, I think that out of that comprehensive plan, we're going to see some housing needs and things like that, and I think we should be prepared for those kind of professional services that go along with that. And I think housing probably is on the top of our list of priorities in the planning department and probably on the council side. So along with that number that you see there, that is not only just what would be in the comprehensive plan, but that is also when we have to have professional services for things that come up within the planning department itself. If there's anything for, that the engineer needs to do for the planning department, plan reviews, that kind of thing, those come out of there. They don't go in the engineering budget, they come out of the planning department because they're for the planning department. So anytime we have a new company come in and the plan reviews need to be done for that company, that comes out of there too. So that's just kind of correcting this budget also. And because you can see, even just this year we're at 117,000 already. And even though we do, work with the developers and that and get those funds back, but we still do have to account for them somewhere too.
No, I'd be open to that. I'd rather see 75 than 100. Since you mentioned housing, is this areas that we could still allocate ARPA funds to?
We'll go review our ARPA. We don't have very much ARPA funds left, but we do have an earmark on housing and the ARPA funds too.
There are other earmarked ARPA funds that haven't been actually spent yet that we could reallocate as well?
I don't think there's very much.
There's a little bit. We're currently working on that report to bring back to the
Yep.
council. There are some funds the council will need to take action on those remaining dollars before the end of the year.
Anything else? All right. What do we do now? We take it back to...
Well, if the council's reviewed everything that they want, and we'll take these suggestions, and then we will come back with a corrected version of where we're at. And like I said, I think our thought process was that we would be able to, since we're getting down to the final here, that we could have this discussion at probably the October 21st council meeting instead of having another work session. If
Okay.
that sounds good, that's when we would, bring these changes and such to that. Because we would like to have then probably at that point in time say, yes, we've cut this enough, and then this would be what would be presented at the Truth and Taxation on December 2nd.
Audrey?
So if we get there and we're not there yet, we could hold a special meeting before December?
Well, certainly.
Okay.
And then, if we get there and we got, then is all our focus would be was on the capital improvement, what you want to spend on for the capital improvement, because that's going to have to be decided. But all that can actually be done after, when the budget is set. Because as long as we know how much money we've got, then the council can decide just where to spend that money.
Okay, are you comfortable with leaving it where it is now and having staff review and come back with a revised?
Yeah, I just think that so much depends on what the school wants to do with SROs. So I think getting an answer from them is going to make a big difference.
So with that, that would not come in the revenues would not come in until the fall, because that's when their budget's going to start 2025, 26 in June 1st. So.
Audrey?
I'm just curious with the SRO, it would be nice to know that too. But the request or the conversation about reducing 4 officers to 3 officers or something like that, the future of SRO affect that in any particular?
I can't answer that. Chief, you want to answer that?
If I understand the question correctly, is if the school would, instead of having 4, reduce it to 3, to how that would affect staffing and
Just
money coming in?
just the staffing, since we're down 4 officers right now.
Correct.
We aren't going to do SRO. Could we change the budget to 3 officers to recruit 3 officers for next year? With the numbers, with the duties kind of thing, is that a possibility from that standpoint? And I know the conversation, at least before, was that was not be recommended. I'm just curious with that conversation.
Sure. I would strongly recommend not reducing that number. Right now, if you gave us 40 officers, we would have spots and jobs for all of them. Right now, we have 32 officers, but 2 of them are in field training right now, so they can't even take a call by themselves or anything. So in essence, we're down to 30, which is probably a early 2000s number for our staffing level. Just because we don't have SROs in the schools, we're still responding to the schools, still taking calls there. It's just that they're not stationed there throughout the whole day. One thing that we're doing too is that we're arranging for DARE yet this year. We're doing that, Captain Anderson has done some creative scheduling. The DARE trained officers are being very flexible with their schedules to allow that. Other officers are too. By not getting our staffing up, that takes away a lot of flexibility. A lot of the mandated training that has to happen could potentially be overtime instead of moving officers around between shifts and that type of thing. So there is an adverse effect that way too. So, I hope the hiring crisis changes here, but I don't see, and police chiefs around the state don't see a rapid wave of officers coming. This is probably a many, many year thing to try and get back to adequate staffing levels. And right now, too, we're dealing with more dangerous people all the time. You know, just the homecoming game from the other night, I'm sure most of you are aware of what happened. That took every officer we had, plus the deputies coming in, and even then, it was a very volatile situation. You know, since 2017, we've had 6 officer-involved shootings since that time. I went in my career 2 decades before that without a single officer-involved shooting. We need every officer out there for the safety of the officers and the citizens that we can get. And just looking ahead for the police department, in about 2 years here, you're going to see another wave of officers that are eligible for retirement. And going in about 5 to 6 years, you'll see another wave coming through, just the way the hiring process has been. And you want officers with some experience to follow in those waves too. So I would strongly encourage you not to cut that number.
Thank you for your information.
Yeah, good. One thing.
Mike?
You're talking about officers responding. I think it was a week or 2 ago that he had three squads respond to the middle school as well?
Correct. There was 2 staff members that were assaulted by an individual, by a student that fled. So that was pretty much the whole shift, responding to that to take care of that too. So.
Yeah.
All right, Kyle?
Sorry to keep the subject going, Council, but just administratively as well for Council's information, not necessarily looking at just looking at the numbers. When we look at the salary line item for the police department budget, current PD salary is 71.8% year-to-date. Where we're at with payroll as a whole is 73. So we're right on budget for payroll, even though we are budgeting for 4 additional unfilled positions. So what that tells us is that there's additional expenses that are coming out of that line. So, which would, like we had discussed earlier, when employees retire or leave employment, vacation, sick leave, that's all paid out of there as well. So, so we're budgeting appropriately for the number of officers that we have. So I think for your consideration to look into the future as well, you might be looking at additional actual increases to that PD budget to make sure that we're accounting for not only additional unfilled positions, but planning for the future of the police department as well.
Retirements.
Retirements or other,
Yes.
right. So long story short, we are budgeting appropriate for the staffing level that we have now in 2025.
Yeah. What we don't budget for is retirements or staff leaving. So when they leave and they have been with us long-term, they have numerous hours of sick and vacation that get paid out.
Are we done?
We're done.
Sort of.
I don't know about you.
Yeah.
Move to
I'm
adjourn.
done.
All right, I'll go on and any community pride announcements. Tom?
The other week, I want to give a shout out to Habit for Humanity. The other week, I was in Sperryville, and I noticed a brand-new house up. Big sign, Habitat for Humanity. That's very good. I'm glad to see that was going on, because that's one of the lots I was talking about last year and the other year, trying to get HARPA funds for to purchase these lots to get a house out there. It was very interesting to see that out in Sperryville. I think it's going to do very well. Kudos to Habitat for Humanity for doing that for us.
All right, thanks, Tom. Anything else? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.